imperfect
Imperfect, exactly.
is not a word that is really constructed into the fabric of a human resources professional. Because there's this thing that if we are in these conversations, if we do something imperfect, we might cost the organization money due to a costly complaint. And I don't know what kind of law did you
I,
practice?
I did litigation for,
Litigation.
yeah.
And so the moment if we say something, that one imperfect thing, it could really mess up. If we're imperfect on a number on payroll. I mean, my number one rule in HR is like you don't f with people's money. That's always been my number one rule in human
I love that
resources.
rule.
Yeah, it's like there. That is the only reason why people really go to work is for money. And so, but I and so imperfect is not something that is really woven with this. So it's also really refreshing to hear that the construction within this framework of the dialogue that you provide is like it is an imperfect conversation.
Yeah, we are
Um
most likely going to get this wrong.
yeah.
Like most likely, we are, both of us are going to get this wrong. Like we've
Mhm.
been getting it wrong since the start of the world. So most likely, the two of us are not going to be the first two people who have a perfect conversation around racism.
Right. And it releases so much of that pressure and anxiety within that space that you allow more trust to walk into a space of that with colleagues and peers like, oh, everyone else is screwing up too? Yes. Great. Like, because I'm in the right place. And it just opens the door for your mind not to be so just riddled with the anxiety and crippled that you don't even have the conversation, that you
Yeah.
just to avoid it. But trust, it's very hard to get that texture within your culture. And because people feel that these kind of conversations are not they're not a place for the workplace. The workplace is not a place for these conversations.
Yeah, so I distinguish though between the workplace, like so
Mhm.
having this conversation and like to a group and two colleagues, like and you see trust show up
Mhm.
from human to human within the
Mhm.
workplace all the time. Like
Mhm.
you have these friends and they may bond around a project and have seen one
Mhm.
another just perform like at the highest level or give everything to a particular project they were working on together, or they
Mhm.
may have cried to one another at lunch about some personal experience they brought to work. So you can have two colleagues at work who
Mhm.
have not only trust but love, like who have loving and trusting
Mhm.
relationships, that they can sit this conversation on top of. It just may have never, like they just may probably have never discussed racism directly.
Yeah.
And so like to have it be that human to human relationship in the workplace and to have the change be made at that level, I think is a lot easier than having the corporation or the enterprise make an attempt at this change.
Mhm. And you're doing it it's a one-to-one approach.
Yeah.
And I think that again, that's where the overwhelming of that comes in when they started to discuss, the repeal of don't ask, don't tell. A lot of it came in just the strangest conversations of it being like, well, the whole shower argument came up, and then there was another argument about it's like where will they sleep? It's like in the same barracks, in the same dorms and things like that. And so a lot of this, whenever we started these dialogues, it was formulated like, well, what is the trust? And what you said, what was the common trust? And this doesn't really work sometimes with strangers, because if strangers don't know one another, there's always just going to be a fight. It's always the right or wrong side most of the time when it's with strangers. But with colleagues and with the trust, that was the common core there, which was like, well, what's within organizations, like, well, what's the mission of the organization? Everybody wants to believe in the mission and the culture of the organization or what we're doing. And so I trust that Toussaint trusts that Clint and Shane is a part of this mission and driving this forward. And so similarity is like we formed the trust factor like that, but you believe in going forward, I believe in going forward. Okay, great. Here's the trust. Now let's have a conversation and
Mhm.
start listening to one another without the fighting. And I was like, where did these dialogues um go? And it was in the one-on-one conversations that we started to have with soldiers and other service members that it came up that they didn't care. The
Yeah.
dialogues and the research that came back was just like, I don't care who you love. I
Yeah.
don't care what you are. Are you going to defend me? Are you integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do? Do you believe in those things? Yeah, great. Absolutely. Then let's move forward. Don't be a jerk. Do your job. And I think we've overcomplicated the conversation and we've tried to politicize them instead of humanizing them.
You got it. Like that, like people are a lot less scary and a lot less complicated than like our constructs of people, right? And then our ideals of people are these categories of people. The soldiers are going to feel like this. Well, let's go talk to like John.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not talk to the soldiers. Let's go talk to John. John, like what's important to you? Yeah, that if I'm in the trenches, this person is going to do everything in their power to save my life. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Be on that. Okay, like Mike, like tell me about it. And then you go down the line and they say the same thing, but you aggregate all those people into this soldiers or aggregate all these people into these professionals or financial advisors or whatever the profession may be, lawyers, and they get really complicated and really complex and they have all this stuff going on. And you go and talk to the person behind that label, and they're just a lot easier to approach and connect with and
Mm-hmm.
a lot more willing to engage and understand. And so I think that like, which is the wisdom of the podcast, right? Like this human to human realness is
Yeah.
where magic happens.
Yeah. And I do get concerned, and I think a lot of times I might alienate myself from colleagues. Um and I have, because the I have not found that in my profession and in my diverse background, that in the industries I've worked in, I have not found to where a big massive engagement survey with a big massive company wide program is the fix.
Yeah.
I have, because when most of these programs go out and that we see the average of a 35% employee engagement, of a return on the engagement in these programs and stuff, like that's an issue. But what is making the biggest impact, what I've seen, have been the one-to-one conversations and in those engagements of how we start building those personal connected relationships with one another. Because I have found no better way across all platforms about how we build and engage better employees and leaders than just on those one-on-one very healthy dialogues.